Kia ora and welcome to this month's Techbytes. I'm Craig Young, the CEO of Two Ends. This month we're actually going to republish a conversation that was held as part of the Flint Talks podcast with two of our leaders, Tennant from Auckland and Robertson from Wellington, with the Honourable Nicola Grigg, the Minister for Women. This comes off the back of an event we held nearly 2 weeks ago here in Auckland around the Ministry's launch of their Gender Pay Gap Toolkit. We held that in conjunction with the Ministry and with Deloitte. That was a very successful event, and we thought that these two leaders should have a conversation with the Minister around the things that they're all passionate about getting more women, more Māori and Pacifica into tech careers. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you again next week. Mā te wā.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of Flint Talks. For those of you that have been listening for a while, you may have noticed that this episode is outside of our normal one-a-month release schedule. When an opportunity like this one presents itself, you just have to take it. And so here we are with a very special end of the month release. On March 8th, so earlier this month, we marked International Women's Day, a global celebration of the social, economic, and cultural political achievements of women around the world. Across New Zealand, we had some incredible events happening, from world record attempts to some art exhibitions and everything in between, that highlighted the contributions of women from all walks of life and provided some really valuable insights to empower the next generation. The Gender Pay Gap Roadshow was a collaboration between Two Ends, Deloitte, and the Ministry for Women in New Zealand, and it was a nationwide series of events addressing the persistent challenges of pay equity in the country. As part of this important conversation, we are really excited to be joined by the Honourable Nicola Grigg, Minister for Women, who has been actively involved in championing gender equality and driving initiatives aimed at closing the pay gap in Aotearoa. Nicola, thank you so much for joining us on this special episode of Flint Talks. Before we dive into the conversation, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself for our listeners and share a little bit about your story.
I'll give you the short version, but look, firstly, thank you so much for having me here speaking with you both today. My name's Nicola Grigg. I am the MP for Selwyn, which is down in Mid-Canterbury, and I am the Minister for Women, Associate Minister of Agriculture, Associate Minister of ACC, and the Minister of State for Trade. The women's portfolio is my primary portfolio, and so this is where I am focusing a vast amount of time and attention at the moment because, as much as New Zealand's got an incredible legacy about advancing the rights and interests of women and girls in this country, as we all know, there's still a lot more to do. So I'm really intent on achieving those things on behalf of women and girls here in New Zealand. And that's, I'm sure, we'll be able to deep dive into more of those priorities as our conversation continues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining us. And for those of you that might be watching, you will have seen that there's a third face on the video today, and that is Eden, who is returning to the podcast. So very excited to have her back. Eden, do you want to do a quick intro of yourself as well?
Hi everyone, I'm Eden. I'm the chair for Flint Wellington. My day job is an in-house lawyer for MAS, and I'm also the treasurer for the Young Lawyers Committee in Wellington.
Awesome. And just a quick intro for me, those of you that might not have heard me introduce myself in all the other episodes. My name is Caitlin. I'm part of the Flint Auckland lead team, and I am head of customer success at Intuito, which is an online learning platform. So in my day-to-day, I'm helping businesses train their staff, members, and volunteers in the best way possible. So now that we've got the introductions out of the way, I'd love to start off with Nicola maybe getting a little bit of a recap of the events that have been around the country. I know you've been in a few places with them, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on how they went and any really great things that might have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So late last year, we launched the first ever government-backed gender pay gap calculator toolkit. And so I've been travelling up and down the country, launching it in various different towns and cities and regions around the country. We've done mostly the North Island so far, and then we're heading down into the South Island in the next few weeks and months. The reason we are getting in front of people is that I want to be able to explain in person my motivation for driving this and, the significance of the gender pay gap in New Zealand and the importance of the work that we all have to do collectively to try and close it. As I'm sure your listeners will be aware, the gender pay gap in New Zealand has sat on or around 9% for 10 years now. And so we need to drive that down. There's all sorts of different mechanisms to be able to do that. And we've been informed by business because we wanted business to take on the toolkit. So we thought, well, we'll have it designed by business for business. And so we are trying to get around as many of the businesses around the country, as many of the professional organizations and professional societies around the country, the chambers of commerce, because we're hoping that there will be a ripple effect out into the economy where people are talking about this and downloading it and starting to use it, because that ultimately enables business to calculate their pay gap. And then, the end goal is that they start to address it and do something about it.
Cool. Well, an amazing initiative, and it's really great to hear that you're getting out in front of people. Definitely, I think it's the best way to make people aware of what is going on and how they can start addressing it. Is the gender toolkit available for individuals, or is it more just for businesses at the moment?
I mean, look, there's nothing to stop an individual accessing it and taking a look at it. In fact, I'd encourage them to do that because, forewarned is forearmed, particularly if you are, seeking new employment and you're looking to go into a contract negotiation. It's really important that you yourself understand that the pay gap exists. And indeed, it is a lot wider in some different sectors. But in terms of going at it from a business perspective, it's been designed for businesses that have a minimum of 10 men and 10 women. And the reason we have to sort of choose numbers like that is to protect anonymity, because of course, there are those businesses that have vast pay gaps, and we don't want to necessarily be exposing some people who are impacted by it. But certainly, I really encourage anybody with an active interest to get on the Ministry for Women's website and take a look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking because we've only got 14 people in our organization, so we wouldn't quite hit that. Eden, I'd love to hear any thoughts you might have about the pay gap in general, or about the toolkit if you've had a look at it.
Yeah, I'm really interested on any feedback you've gotten, Nicola, from businesses that have started looking at it or using it, or yeah.
It's really interesting. When we launched in November, we weren't entirely sure how it was going to land. So we rolled it out across the government agencies for as far and wide as we could. And as I referred to earlier before, the professional agencies as well, and the chambers of commerce. Since then, we've had about 17,000 hits and about 900 odd downloads of the workbook, because as well as a calculator being there's also workbooks which provide advice and guidance as to how businesses can start to tackle the gender pay gap. So, I mean, look, we've not heard a bad word about it, because it can only do good ultimately. But I am the first person to say this is just the first iteration. So it's only calculating the average pay gap at the moment. We're very, very aware that it does not yet have the ability to calculate pay gaps between various ethnicities, nor indeed people with disability. And the reason we've gone out with this first iteration like it is because, again, informed by business, the advice was that business itself isn't entirely clear on how to collect that data, respecting anonymity, people's privacy, and those kinds of things. Having said that, the more we're traveling around talking about it, the more we're having business come to us saying, oh, well, we're doing this way. And so, of course, the Ministry for Women is saying, please come, we want to talk to you in further detail and depth about what you're doing, because, we're not here to reinvent the wheel. We're taking the best practice from across the country, across the economy, and transposing that into our workbooks and into the advice that we're giving, because, it's been tested and proven in the private sector, which we think is the best way forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing to have you state that this isn't the end product, that you are looking to improve it, because I feel like that's a lot of things that get launched like this is, one and done. We did the thing. Now, we've washed our hands of it. But as you said, you've got a lot of work to do. So hearing that you are getting feedback, improving it as you go is amazing. And yeah, I'd love to keep updated with it. So just for anyone listening, where can they follow, keep updated with Toolkit?
Look, first and foremost, visit the Ministry for Women website where the toolkit is hosted. It has been shared across the likes of Business New Zealand and other organisations, but the host is the Ministry for Women website. There will be ongoing iterations, and look, we'll do publicity around that as and when we launch them and make them available.
Cool. Awesome. In saying that, the Ministry for Women is something that a lot of our listeners may not really know much about either. So I'd love if you could dive a little bit deeper into that as a whole, what it is, what it does, how it is helping women in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, it's obviously the best ministry across government. But look, it's a small government agency, but it's very powerful. And I think it plays a very powerful role in providing that gender perspective across other agencies. So if you think about big legislative programs that might be occurring, across government and indeed through the parliament, there might be health reforms taking place or reforms to the justice sector or to the social development sector, all those kinds of places. The ministry will provide a gender lens to those agencies, and they provide me with advice to then talk with my ministerial colleagues about. But they're deeply, deeply connected with organisations across the country, so not just government, but of course NGOs and community groups, because again, that's the secret sauce. That's where we get all of our knowledge and all of our learning from, that we can then bring back to government to ensure that we are pushing through the best policy and the best legislative program that we possibly can, that is going to enable and improve the lives of women and girls in this country.
Amazing. Eden, you'll probably be very excited about that too.
Yes, love it. Love it. Also really interested in, I guess, whether this position was something you sort of put your hand up for and a space that you've been interested in for a while.
Yeah, I was a spokesperson for women when we were in opposition, and when we formed a government, the Prime Minister rang me and offered me the portfolio, which I was very excited about because I was also 8.5 months pregnant at the time. So, to be able to have had a baby and return back to work whilst being a Minister for Women and actually start to make some really progressive initiatives, holding this portfolio has been really exciting for me because, I think I'm really determined that while I hold this portfolio, we're going to really start to tick some boxes. So, I've got 4 key priorities, and within each of those priorities, we've got quite significant work streams underway that, of things that we want to achieve on behalf of women and girls. And so I'm really determined that those gains will be significant and will be meaningful before I finish this job.
Well, that's amazing. I wasn't aware that you had a child while you were the Minister for Women, so that's
the high chair, and if you look further,
oh yes,
a stroller and a porta pot.
I love that. Well, I mean, you're just walking the walk and setting the example for women all over the country that, you can be a mum and hold really high, powerful positions. We're actually, one of our next episodes that we're planning is on returning to the workforce. One of our previous Flint members has just come back from maternity leave. So that's actually a topic that we'll be addressing soon. And so maybe we'll have to get you back on for that.
Plenty of insights to offer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Eden, was there anything else that you wanted to jump in and ask the minister?
What are you most excited about for the next year in your role?
Oh, I think, as I was just referring to my 4 priorities, I'm really excited that we've set some achievable, measurable, tangible goals. And so the first and foremost is improving the economic empowerment for women. So that starts with addressing the pay gap. The other part of that puzzle is around driving more women into leadership positions and therefore more high-paying positions. And so the Ministry for Women holds a nominations database where we can draw on, we as government ministers can draw on to appoint women to public sector boards and agencies. So that's really exciting. We're doing a bit of work in that space at the moment so that ultimately we can build the thing out and potentially open it out to the private sector as well. Because as I say, driving economic empowerment for women is the #1 priority. The other one is around improving online safety. Again, I really want to see more women seeking leadership positions and particularly public facing positions, but we know from all of the data that a lot of them are turned off by it because of the harm that is occurring online and in cyberspace. I mean, there's no point beating around the bush. It's ugly at times. So we're stepping up alongside NetSafe, and we're going to be launching another initiative in May around the local government conference. And the reason we've timed it with that is because it's a really good platform to be talking about women in public office and women in leadership. And then the other one, is an extrapolation of that around improving safety, is the Ministry for Women is helping inform various pieces of legislation that are going through the Parliament to improve women's safety, around making stalking an offence, making strangulation an offence, things like that. That has all been informed by women on the ground, NGOs, and all of those agencies that are working in that area. And then, of course, women's health, because we can't participate equally in the workforce until we have equity in the health sector and the health system. And so it's very conceptual at the moment, but we're working on a continuum of a woman's health life cycle, for want of a better word, for example, starting with puberty, moving into maternity, moving into childcare, maternal health services, moving into breast screening, bowel screening, all of, that continuum of a woman's life cycle. And then building out a picture that will hopefully help to improve women's health literacy, because a lot of people aren't aware of where they can tap in and out of the health sector and health system. So, as I say, pretty conceptual at the moment, but I really want to get this thing off the ground before the end of this parliamentary term, which of course is in 2026, which gives us about 16 to 18 months left to get it done. So we're working hard and fast on all of those areas, just as I say, just to really be able to make some meaningful gains in each of those areas.
Amazing. I mean, that's definitely a lot to be working on all at once. And if the goal is by the end of this term, you've got that 16 to 18 months. So it'd be really exciting to keep an eye on everything and see how it all goes. I just do want to say thank you for all the hard work that you are doing. It's amazing to hear someone so passionate and actually getting the work done. So often I think we hear about people talking about what needs to be done without really having the go out and get it done to back it up. So yeah, it's just amazing to speak with you today and hear a little bit about your story and about what you're aiming to achieve.
Yeah, just echo what Caitlin's said. Thank you so much. And just one final question, if that's okay, which would be, if you could give your younger self some career advice, what would it be?
Back yourself. I talked about this in a lot of my roadshow speeches, is, there's a lot of people in this world who will try and crush you. And it's happened to all of us. And some of us have let it impact us in career decisions we've made. And then there's others of us who've actually used it as an opportunity to go forth and conquer. And so that's why I say to people, just back yourself. Don't let some idiot who's going to try and crush you get in your way. You just keep going. If you've got an end goal on sight, you just keep going.
I love that.
I love that too. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. We're very thankful that you were able to find time to on the podcast and share a little bit about what you're doing. And definitely for some of our listeners, it's probably the first time they've heard about the majority of the things that you've mentioned. It'd be really great to spread the word.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.